friend who was looking after her had come in as I was in the bath, trying to sort of hurry me up, and my knees was like pasty chalky white, and she said to me, "Make sure you wash your knees." That's the colour of my knees. Hello everyone, my name's Denver, Senior Manager for Tameside Youth in Mind Service.
Hi, I'm Nick. I'm the Project Manager for the Counselling Provision in Youth in Mind in Oldham, Ashton and Rochdale.
Hi, I'm Aisha and I'm one of the Senior Managers for Adult Therapeutic Services.
Hiya, I'm Tabitha and I'm School Practitioner for Oldham.
Hi, I'm Sean. I'm an Access and Crisis Navigator at Togmind.
Hi, I'm Priscilla and I'm the Senior Finance Manager at Togmind.
Hi, I'm Molly. I'm a counsellor at Mind, currently training to be a counselling psychologist.
Hi, I'm Ryan. I'm one of the IAP counsellors for Togmind.
Hi, my name is Zainab. I'm a listening space worker at Togmind Oldham.
How important do you feel black representation is in mental health?
I think for me, when I look for counsellors, I've always felt more comfortable with someone that I at least feel like I know can understand what's saying, because a lot of my trauma is around race and racism. So to sit with someone and feel completely comfortable and safe in that environment, usually I will look for someone that is of Afro-Caribbean descent. So that's important for me.
Yeah, I think what mental health is missing probably a lot of is a peer-to-peer, someone like you say, who sits across from you can recognise and relate to what you've gone through. And I think that's what mental health in general is missing, and especially, black representatives.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it is vitally important that, black people are represented more in mental health as practitioners, especially.
And it's the connection as well, isn't it? Sitting with somebody like Aisha said, who you feel knows where your journey is.
Absolutely.
Or, there's some kind of cultural barriers to mental health. Some people find it embarrassing.
Yeah.
Some people find it, there's so much stigma, and it's only somebody who knows, they say he who feels it knows it. So it's like somebody who has empathy to that knows, you're finding it difficult to connect, and that's when the person can help, say it's fine, I know what you say things that relate to what the concerns are.
I think sometimes in counselling it's like you don't always have to say or like reflect your understanding. Sometimes you kind of just connect with somebody and it's part of like your cultural background. So when, say if I'm talking to someone from a similar background to me, sometimes I'll get like nods or just like affirmations, and to me it kind of says a lot without even actually saying the words sometimes. So yeah.
It can even be in his language, like how he uses language. There was someone that come to me and they didn't understand why a particular client who was black kept saying "in it," and they're like, "Oh, I think they were like over exploring it." They could have been right, but it could just be part of their dialects as well.
Just having that connection into it, and then that brings that relationship, hopefully more beneficial to the person who's taking the therapeutic service.
Don't get me wrong, I've had white counsellors as well, and I've done great pieces of work with them and felt better afterwards. I've just found that I naturally seek that comfort. It's like in external supervision, I have a black external supervisor, and even in terms of like work dynamics, like there's just an unspoken understanding, and like sometimes you're just like, oh yeah, that one, and I'm like, oh yeah, that one. So it just makes me feel more comfortable, typically.
Yeah.
I've never had that experience. I've tried to find sort of someone that's more diverse, but it's been really, really difficult to find somebody. And of course, race-based stress has a massive impact on your mental health and your physical health, and not being able to sort of have that conversation because maybe they don't understand the subtleties of something like systemic racism you feel petty bringing it up, or you might get sort of
Undermined.
invalidated, and you kind of the kind of bunching their eyebrows up, thinking, I don't know what you mean by that. So then you're not exploring that, you're not dealing with that or processing it. It's kind of left behind, and I think that's a real problem.
Yeah.
And sometimes it becomes more of like a learning experience, not just for the client, but like for the counsellor as well. And even though it's really good, you know, having different representation, trying to understand each other, sometimes it can take less time to really make that counselling connection when there's already that underlying empathy and real understanding. And I don't really feel like there is a lot of representation, but I do think there is being more done to kind of get more people of different backgrounds involved.
Yeah, I know National Mind are doing a recruitment drive specifically targeted at Black, Asian, minority ethnic people, because it is so important.
Yeah. And I think also as well, because the counselling that a lot of services provide is time limited, so if you've got that connection quite early on in that therapeutic relationship, it's going to benefit that client because they're going to feel connected, they're going to open up more, and obviously the sessions aren't forever.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good way as well.
Definitely. I think I've had a client come to me in a drop-in, and he was from Mozambique, and straight away he was having problems at school, and he was able to just sort of release and go, I think they were being racist. And you could tell that perhaps if he'd have had a white practitioner, he maybe wouldn't have brought that up, because it wasn't overt racism, it was quite subtle, but I think that's really important, that somebody can feel relaxed and be able to just share that, and we can explore that together and talk about it.
Yeah, similar. I've had a Ghanaian walk into the listening space. University, she came from Ghana. She came to stay with her dad, who's been here forever. But that was the issue. They had counselling in uni, but she just didn't access it. And she walked in here and felt straight at home, because immediately she was talking about home, what she misses back home. Oh yeah, you understand that? Yeah. So she was very relaxed and open. So sometimes that connection really helps. She came twice and never came again, because I said to her it was okay to access school counselling. Initially she thought, I can't be talking about stuff like that with strangers. I just feel as if this is my own thing. Well, she's been raised back home, and this is the way she feels. You don't just go bantering to strangers about personal issues. So
it's a cultural understanding as well.
I think training to be a psychologist, most of my profession is white, so that is a real shame, because of all the reasons that you're saying. But I think as well, I think the training could be better as well, to support and help white therapists to not be paralysed with fear to talk about matters of race. There's been studies to say that if in the therapy room, if someone was to bring up systemic racism or something about oppression, then a white therapist is more likely to ignore that because of fear of saying something wrong, or of appearing racist because you say something wrong. And I think that culture needs to change a bit as well, and feel more comfortable being able to have these difficult conversations.
That's so important.
There are a lot of barriers in psychology, though, anyway, just how especially the clinical psychology route, it's so competitive. You've got to be from the right uni with the right grade, and obviously systemic factors do impact on, people with black heritage getting through the door. That needs to change.
Yeah, definitely.
Have you ever had a conversation about race with a child?
Yeah, that's some funny ones. I think I've told you this before.
Yeah.
The first time I met my husband is white, and the first time I met my nephew, I was with him for hours and we were playing and it was fine. And then he just turned around to me and went, "You're black like Stormzy," and that just absolutely cracked me up, because following that conversation was like, it was only like 3, bless him. I was just like, yes I am, but not quite like Stormzy, but yes I am. But yeah, I've had some difficult ones as well. I've had my niece, because my half brothers, well they are my brothers, but their half brothers are white, and my niece just didn't understand how I could be related to them. but not be white. But again, they were very, very young. But for me at the time, for them it was fine and it was a light-hearted conversation and it was very simply explained. But for me it just felt like I felt othered in that conversation, and it did hurt. I think I remember feeling quite hurt by it.
Yeah, I mean, I've had sort of brief, subtle conversations with my daughter on, I suppose, just their awareness, in particular, you know, at school when, you know, she's come home and said that friends have a nickname for her, which was Pom Pom or something along those lines because of her hair. Fluffball, actually, I think that was it. And so it's just having to remind her that, you know, although that's innocent, and obviously, you know, that from a child's eyes, they're not meaning anything, you know, malicious by it, but it's just that understanding that actually that's something that is quite unique to her and her race and her background, and that actually it's really something that has to be, you know, embraced, and that's something that I've tried to instill quite often, that, you know, even down to us, you know, wanting to, because she's going to experience and look for, you know, maybe straightening her hair and looking at, you know, other girls that may have straighter hair, but embracing that actually your hair is beautiful and, you know, never change it, you know, you stay the way you are and, you know, embrace who you are. So it's things like that, I suppose.
Yeah. Our niece, she's mixed race. She goes to a Catholic school and all her friends are white. So she's, I don't know if you know, she's got this obsession with trying to straighten her hair. And we're trying to instill with her that her natural hair is beautiful. And I love it when she's, you know, when she hasn't straightened, it's all, you know, all the curls are wild and she looks beautiful. But yeah, I think she feels pressured because of the fact she has these white friends who all have GHDs and straighten their hair, and she feels pressured to do that. So yeah, we're trying
you
to
just want to be the same at that age,
which is fine, because you do that in school. I think everybody conforms to some degree to whatever people find, you know, whatever's popular,
things like that.
But I think trying to instill in our children that who they are, you know, is wonderful and it's beautiful. I think that's an important thing. And my children, obviously my elder sister is mixed race. She's got 2 daughters who are mixed race, and so we've had the conversations with my children that we, you know, our family might differ from somebody else's, but that's fine, you know. And it's actually more interesting having the family that I've got, and they're well aware of, and I think it's important that they know the difference as well, that they understand, you know, race and what that means.
Yeah, I think it's good to be upfront and honest with children. I think we can shy away and think, oh, maybe they're too young to understand and what have you. But I think I missed that because I grew up in a white household. My brothers and my mum were white, and I did have a relationship with my dad, but I saw him like weekly, so I didn't have I wasn't immersed in the black side of my family as much as I think I would have liked and would have benefited from. So to hear you having those conversations with your daughter is so lovely, because as much as my mum was like, your hair's lovely and it's amazing and keep it curly, I was like, well, I'm looking at you and you look one way. I'm looking at my peers and they look one way, and it's just me, and I just want to feel the same and accept it.
I had a similar experience growing up. My mum's white and don't have any contact with the black side of my family, so I didn't actually realise that I was any different till I was othered, you know, in school. So it's taken me quite a long time to sort of connect with that side of my heritage, and I've made a conscious effort with my children because their dad's white as well, so to try and have more black history, more awareness, embracing curls, you know, and my children all look very different. So I have children with afros, I have children with straight hair, and you know, we try and talk about it as much as possible and celebrate. So we're really excited to watch Wakanda Forever when that comes out. You know, we just try and immerse ourselves as much as we can with that family disconnect. But it's really important.
And it's difficult as well, isn't it? Because when I think back, you know, I don't know for yourself, Tabitha, but when I think back on my own experience as well, and being a child that grew up in a predominantly working class white background, and even just little things as being in school. My father wasn't around that much as a child, and just being in school or being in the being out in the neighbourhood, walking around with parents and not actually seeing any black representation at all, and then being in school and getting asked those questions from another child, why is why are you brown, why is your mum not, and and to a point I can remember literally it affected me that much that I used to go to the toilet and literally scrape my skin to see if there was white under, or try and convince, because the palm of my hands are white, that I am also white. So
it's tricky, isn't it? Because my children are mixed race, and we still have they have a good relationship with the black side of the family. And I remember when they were quite young, my daughter's fairer than my son, and I remember my daughter having a conversation with the grandma, Mama would call her, saying, I'm white like mummy and Kobe's black like daddy, and Mama said, no, you're black. She said it's important that she understands at a young age who she is, and I think going back to the hair, understanding that she has got her curly hair and how she looks after it, we sort of had to hide the straighteners from grandma, because we knew that would not be grandma would not be happy. And obviously making sure the products were on it. So I was quite fortunate that way, that I had that knowledge and that experience from quite a strong
on that as well.
I think it's important to have the conversation with children, because when we were growing up, me and my dad met my mum whilst she was pregnant with my sister. This is the story I've got, it might differ, and when my sister was born, my dad brought my sister up as his daughter. So technically we had the same mum and dad, biologically we didn't, and this was never explained to us as kids, which is fine because we were kids, but we had to have that conversation between us. And I remember exactly where I was. We was in the cinema, I think we was about to watch Titanic. And I remember turning to my sister and said, are you my real sister? And she said, yeah, we've just got different dads. She'd worked that out by herself. This was never a conversation that was had with her and my mum. And I think that did drive a bit of a wedge between them.
It can isolate them.
Because that's the person you're supposed to be able to open up to, and that's the person you should trust. And for her to not be told that by my mum.
It's difficult though, just on that, and probably going back to yourself as well, Nick, because I'm and probably the counsellor in me, but it's that empathy as well towards parents that are bringing up child from a mixed background, because it's like understanding things about life, for instance, putting products in hair and things. My mum was good, to be fair, more so with my brother. She used to plait his hair and things like that, but in terms of like the right products and other things, and
just like lotion on your skin as well.
Exactly.
Again, that's another
I was
thing
always
Mama
at dry
would
knees
say.
as a child.
You've got ashy skin, put the cream on. You've got ashy skin, you can go in there thinking, better put the cream on and I'm going to get in trouble.
Do you know, actually, just on that, there's a really funny story. I must have been, it was as my sister was just born, I remember, and actually my sister's white. And we'd been left with a neighbour when I was young, because my mum was in labour, and I finished school, getting a bath, and was getting ready to go to see my sister, and a friend who was looking after her had come in as I was in the bath, trying to sort of hurry me up, and my knees was like pasty chalky white, and she said to me, make sure you wash your knees. That's the colour of my knees. So it's like it's just knowledge. You wouldn't know. You wouldn't know. She wouldn't know.
I went to my daughter last week. A friend was there. You need some cream on your skin. Looks ashy. A friend just started laughing. What do you mean? I said, look, her skin's dry. She needs to put cream on. But
the knowledge is out there. To find out.
think it's easier now.
It's easier now.
I mean, I was a kid back in them days, but how difficult would it have been?
So I'm from Barnsley, and
Really
I was the
hard.
only
Yeah.
non-white, apart from I think 2 Asian girls in my school. There was like certain areas of Barnsley where more people from the West Indies came, but
Yeah.
I'm talking no
Right.
black people. So I think
Yeah.
it's different round here.
Yeah. It is.
But yeah, there's
Right. yeah.
nothing there.
Yeah.
I feel like it.
Yeah.
You go. I was just going to say, I feel like it still doesn't help that you have a lot of beauty magazines and things like that are still tailored to white person's skin or
Yeah.
white women's hair. So you have to kind of actually go out and seek the knowledge rather than it just being there the way it is for someone like me.
Yeah, it's very Eurocentric. But even little things like going to a hotel, like the shampoo, you can't wash your hair with that shampoo. Strip everything out. It's just not. There's no conditioner. Going swimming, for example, when I was a kid, I would not go swimming at school. I'd make all sorts of excuses because you go and your hair's just all matted, and it's just like, no, I'm trying to get a cap over your curls. It's just not happening.
They've actually just licensed the Afro swimming cap, haven't they?
Yeah,
Which
yeah.
sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's really good.
To be used.
In Manchester, we moved recently in a home to a new place, and my son went out with his other brother and his dad to try and get a haircut, and there were like 3 barbers down the road. And I was so sure they were going to go. I just said to them, oh, there will be like 3. I've seen like 3 barbers down the road. So I'm sure one of them would be open. 3 of them were open, but they came back without a haircut. And my son was fuming. My older son was fuming, and he was like, Mom, they won't give me a haircut. And I said, why? He said, because he just turned around and said, we don't do Afro hair.
Yeah, I've been
So
turned away a lot.
Yeah, I've had to sit him down and explain that. He said, no, I don't get your explanation, because he was using clippers. So he could have clipped my hair, Mom. There's no reason why, I don't see, because they're not. I looked at what he was holding, and it was the same clipper.
Yeah.
So I said to him, well, we'd have to just go and find where they do Afro hair, or check the other, 2 other barbers. He said, well, we checked the other 2 as well. They don't do Afro hair. So, well, you get on the bus and go to they've had to get on the bus and go like 20-30 minutes away to get his hair done.
Is that being othered on a regular basis?
Yeah, and you'll have to do that on a regular basis. And it's, kind of also trying to explain, when you've got friends and you fall out with friends, and they would call you names. I've said to my son, they will call you names. So it doesn't matter which name they call you. If they call you fat lips, that's the common one. And he says, Mom, that I think that's racist. And he's using the words as in, Mom, that's racist. And I'm saying to him, yes, okay, the choice of, lashing back is racist. But they're not they just want to say things to you that they think will hurt.
Yeah.
So if you were short, forget the color, they will still say, you're short. So it's just your friend's way of getting back at you, but because they're upset with you, you're in a quarrel and they're looking for what to say that hurts. It doesn't mean they're doing that specifically because of your color. They're just choosing something that has to do with your color,
So it's like the lack
just so that he knows that the aggression could be anything. Whether he was tall, short, green, blue, it is the process of that anger. They're just choosing one thing. And I think it's important that sometimes the kids understand that you're not any different. You're one and the same. It doesn't matter what color is on their skin. Because I've had to go in and say to his head teacher, these are all his friends. They spend so much time in my house. He spends so much time in their house. And when they do play, I see the love. They are connected. Because they're kids, they don't see all that. So they are, and they're bound to fall out. So it's just them being taught, when you do fall out, choose a more appropriate word, really. But they do. So it's for kids to understand from that age that you're not different. And I think that has helped my son a lot, because he's just started a new school, and he called me up and said, "Oh, Mom, this is my friend, this is my friend, this is my friend." And I was in his room. There are like 6 of them. 4 of them are black. 2 of them are white. Guess where who my son's friends are? Naturally galvanized himself to the 2 white boys. He has no white relation. He's completely a black boy, but he knows, it's within him that he doesn't see the difference.
And
So I think it's important that they understand from childhood that it's just some things, the difference are there, it's good to talk about it, but there are some things that are just, things that happen naturally. Whether you're white or black, you will fall out with your friends. They will call you horrible names, but it's just the choice. It's just when they pick a choice of words, we can begin to think, oh, this is the reason why. And it's because the kids see the difference naturally, but it's for them to understand that that difference really isn't there. It's
the intent in the words that
but
you use.
we are all the same. Really. So if we believe we are all the same, we truly are. It's just what we, how we translate, our experiences, kind of.
And I think race issues are not really discussed in schools.
That's why I had to go see his teacher and say to him, these boys are constantly in my house. But, it is really saying to the head teacher, you need to go into class. This needs to be spoken about. Because unless you make them know that they're the same, then it's a waste of time, really, talking about this whole thing.
I have friends to this day that used to call me racial names, not even just like when we fell out, but just like as like terms of endearment almost. And I think because I was so desperate to fit in, I, like, as much as it hurt, I just allowed it. And we're still friends now, but we've had that conversation as adults and they've apologised and we've been able to heal and like move on. So as much as you can have the ignorance of children and it can still hurt, you can also mend from that later on and still continue friendship.
I think just on that, the only issue I have is if people are making racist comments, as if it's not challenged. You hear these sayings, don't you? Oh, well, I've got a black friend and he never mind when I said that. And it's like, okay, but maybe they felt uncomfortable challenging it. Maybe they just thought there's no point trying to have that discussion with you because you don't understand what I'm talking about. So I do feel strongly that it should be challenged, otherwise people don't know, they don't learn. I mean, I've gone to some places and people still go, oh, you're half caste. I'm just like, whoa, you can't say that, it's racist. And it explains the historical connotations with that term. Ask a person how they identify. They might identify as being black, they might identify as being mixed race. Don't just use terminology, especially really outdated terminology. And I wonder if it's because they've not been challenged with that growing up. They thought, well, that's fine because no one's ever said that's not appropriate. So and
I've always heard a lot that the people who are of a certain age, elderly, they get a pass because they've been set in their ways for so long. That I don't agree with that.
You can always learn, like,
of course you can. You're never too old to learn. So I agree with you.
Have you ever experienced racism be passed off as banter?
Right, yeah. So, like in my family, I'm actually adopted, and I'm on more of my white side. And growing up, some of my older brothers, they would say things like, this might be a bit controversial, but like he would say, "Oh, you're right, black boys," or things like that. And there was a lot of love behind what he said. But growing up, I didn't really I just took it as banter. Whereas now, in some ways, I still feel like maybe I should speak up a little bit about it because he doesn't really say that to me anymore. But we never really had a conversation about it. But if it did, I probably would be like a bit more like, I don't know if that seems like appropriate even back then anymore. But it's one of those things where it feels like I kind of just went along with it, and I think it kind of goes back to similar what we were talking about with the kids of not really having that conversation and not really being educated myself from a young age. So I think it would have been nice for, you know, more information to be given to me at a younger age than where I am now. Just because, I don't know, I feel like people should be learn more. Like to this day, it doesn't hurt me at all, because I think the love was there behind it and the banter was there. But when I sit that back and I think about it, it kind of feeds into that narrative of me just having to kind of put up with those sort of comments.
Reflecting back now as an adult and understanding a bit more of self.
Yeah, because overall it kind of has that overarching impact of me being different, or almost me not being good enough, or like why do I have to stick out? Do you know what I mean? Things like that. Maybe perhaps for like the negative labels attached to it. It doesn't seem super positive when it's. Do you know what I mean? So it's just a mixed bag of when it comes to like banter and comments. Like,
It is difficult. I mean, and I'll hold my hands up, and I think it probably stems from that simple fact of growing up in an environment where everybody else is, you know, different than me, and just that, you know, I suppose you get an inbuilt. You grow an inbuilt sort of, if you like, disregard that really shouldn't be there, if you like. Just simply because you've had to withstand that for so many years, and actually, you know, you've been in that environment where it's just been normalised to the point of where now you're accepting of it. Even now, sometimes and you know, like I say, sometimes when I think about it, when I was listening to you then as well, Tabitha, you know, it is a little bit shaming for myself. I'll sometimes, you know, let that pass, or I won't challenge it, because, you know, even though it might not necessarily now affect me, I used to say it's not going to go on and affect somebody else if they're not given that knowledge. And I think it's maybe just being a little bit considerate of that. And you know, I'll say it now, I'll probably go on and give a pass again in the future, but I think it's probably, and it is important, it's not probably, it is important for, you know, to build that courage to actually challenge that when it does come up.
It is really even better for talking about mental health. The question is, do we live it? Do we just let it pass for our mental health purposes?
Self-preservation.
Or do you just keep stressing yourself every time it happens? So it's a thin line.
There's also the reaction as well of the person. Like I've had it where someone's been singing like a rap song or an R&B song and said the N-word. I mean, I've said that countless times, but as an adult, and now I've grown more confident to say, oh, can you not just say that? It's never like a, you know, wagging the finger at somebody, but it's just to say that makes me feel really uncomfortable. Like, and they'll be like, oh, well, I've had someone not mind it before, and then it turns into a back and forth. I've even had people like in floods of tears before, and for me, I feel like in that situation it shouldn't be taken there. Of like, oh, I'm so sorry, like I never meant to. And I get where that person's coming from, but for me, I just want to have it a simple, like, could you not say that respectfully? No. And it doesn't have to be a big thing. And sometimes I've let things pass to avoid that reaction because I just don't want it.
I feel like it then becomes like I'm being affected, but now I'm having to hold that space for them. And again, it feels like it's like continues the cycle a little bit.
I agree. It kind of perpetuates racism, I think, because the person's then going, oh, I can't cope with the fact that this is your experience and it's different from mine, and now I'm going to be defensive. I don't want to have to deal with the fact that I've probably insulted loads of people loads of times, but actually no, I'm just going to cry and you can calm me.
You show me that I'm not a bad person. I'm probably not. It's just not having the information, and it's okay. It's like a generational thing that's been happening for years, and there are slight differences, and I feel like it's okay to have a conversation about it and just not be this painful, awful thing of like you're a bad person because you're not. It's just it's
You've
just
never been checked for.
Exactly, yeah.
I don't know.
And I think that's part of the problem, that we see racism as being this horrific thing, and people have connotations of like, you know, certain political groups and things like that, and scenes from the 80s. But actually it can be somebody doing something like that, and just say it's not a dirty word, it's just that you're not educated in why that's offensive, and we should have an open discussion about it rather than going, oh God, now I'm a racist and I'm one of those bad people. No, you've
like
said
say things moved on. You said that, didn't you? That, you know, the older generation tend to stick in the rut and they don't sort of move with the times and the terminology. You know, I've been part of a black family for 30 odd years, lots of nieces and nephews, and you know, to say half caste back in the day, that was totally acceptable, but now with my own children that's not acceptable. But the older generation tend to stuck in that and then look at you, so you, why is it, should they have not have said that?
I think whilst a lot of terminology has evolved, people still have that fear of the word racism or racist.
I think it's worse than actually the act. It is worse than the act.
Absolutely. And I think that word is what people fear of being labelled as, when it's not that, you know. That's not what you say. Well, I mean, that's from what I've taken from what you're saying. That's not what he's just trying to change, that subtle way that people might speak. And
like I say, I had that with friends that I went to school with, where we've had those conversations now. I don't think back then when they were 14, 15 years old going like my N-word, or I think you know, like called nignog was like a word that was used. Again, I didn't like it at the time. It was something I accepted to be accepted, but now they are not racist people, and we've had those conversations. They've been like, oh actually I'm so sorry I hurt you, like I can't believe I said that, a little bit of shame, but you know, that's not something that stays with them because they know that they've learned, educated themselves and healed and moved on.
And that's the difference, isn't it? That's a big difference.
My friend actually, and he's my best friend, we've been best friends for a very, very long time, but I always remember a particular point where he said something to me and my brother, and he didn't mean anything by it, and he must have been, what, 4 or 5 maybe, and if I've ever mentioned it again now, the embarrassment and the sort of denial that he has against it is just like, because he's just in no way that type of person. So to have said that is obviously just something that he's heard or and just used off the cuff. Now he's just like, no, I did not happen at all. It's like, and you can see the sort of dread in his face when I've said it to him before. But I think this is it, isn't it? I think it's just that. You know, lack of education, and exactly what you said before about obviously the friends and things like that. You know, some people as well will just try to find as many things as they possibly can to try and hurt you in that moment, but are not necessarily, you know, looking to, you know, cause you some continued pain or distress. You know, it's I suppose in a sense, in a way, it's a little bit of human nature. We do that, you know, from a young age. We get in arguments, with fights or whatever, anything we can use in that moment as a defence mechanism, you know.
But I still think that people need to be educated on like the history of them words, because it's not the same as maybe insulting different characteristics, because there's not a long history of what them words mean, and then words mean really ugly things, and that black people are inferior. So I still think that there needs to be education around that, and I think, as we were saying before about kind of being terrified of appearing racist, I think that is a real problem, because it stops people from looking inward and thinking we do live in a racist society, and that is a really sad fact, and there is probably things that we've picked up and unconscious biases because of that, and we need to look inside of us and figure out what is racist, and to question that rather than going, no, I'm not, because then that's just denial, and it just,
I think separating from like saying you are a racist, saying this thing that you've done or this word that you've said is racist. It's not you. It doesn't encompass who you are. It's just that this, and it can be corrected.
Chosen the wrong word.
And it's. I feel like with banter, usually that's kind of like something to like where people are trying to develop a relationship, and like again, there's usually a lot of love involved, and it can be a bit cheeky here and there, but sometimes it's like, even with me, with my other friends who are from other races, if I've ever had banter or felt like I was going to say something, you know, a bit, I'm not sure about that, then I would just ask. I would just be like, was that alright for me to say? Or, I'm not sure, is this the way that you would, you know, be actually interested in the culture? And because that's what the goal is at the end of the day, is to actually connect with someone, not to pull someone down. So I think to end up being defensive or being like, oh god, and focusing on the wrong is almost kind of like counterproductive in my opinion. And it'd be better, again in my opinion, to kind of just ask questions.
Openness.
I think as well, correct me if I'm wrong, and if this is inappropriate, let me know, but I don't think the responsibility is just for black people to change it. I think it's the responsibility is also for white people, if they come across it, to put it in check.
Everyone's responsibility.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I have that with my cousins are ethnically, biologically, however you want to say it, the same as me. They just happen to be white passing, and when they've been around people that have said like racist things, whether that be banter or serious, that person has felt safe in my cousin's presence to say that to them, and that's when they've had the opportunity to check them. Because it's like when they're not going to say it necessarily directly to a black person, to an Asian person, wherever the demographic might be.
There's also this misconception that a black person can use like a racist, like the N-word, to a fellow black person, and that will not be racist. Racism is more of banter. But if a white person should use that word, that means that it's racism. So there's this misconception about the context. Is it banter? If it's the same race, can we use those words? But if it's a different race, then
I think everyone feels comfortable in different. Like for me, I don't use the N-word because it makes me feel comfortable because of people calling me the N-word who shouldn't have. But I know that people that have grown up with black friends, and especially in really black neighbourhoods, or like in America especially, it is a word that they use, and if you're comfortable, you're comfortable. But I suppose it's about asking the question, like what you said, Zainab. Yeah, are you comfortable?
I think it's just in a relationship, it's communication really.
Yeah.
So it's how you're comfortable communicating, because black, white, green, purple, it's how you come across. If I feel that the words you're using with me is hurting me, whatever, even if it's not racist or whatever, I should be able to say no. I don't like those words, whether or not it's a racist word or whatever. It's the words that are racist. You're very right. It doesn't matter whether it's between me and you, or me and a white person, or it's the words. So it's a general thing. If we use it, if I could say to somebody else, really, you have a big nose, it's hurtful. So for somebody, you might just laugh and say, oh no, I don't. So it's just communication in a relationship, really. Everybody has the way they translate how things come across to them. So the most important thing really is that education. Knowing that this thing is the words, that racist is the words, not the persons, involved or who they are. It's not like saying you're a racist person. I think that's when the defense comes. When people feel as if that word is being used to define a human being rather than the words themselves.
I guess that defensiveness can even manifest, even if you don't say, that's racist what you've said, even if there's a hint of you being uncomfortable with what's being said, defences can come up straight away, and that fragility of not, like you're saying, being open and reflective and looking and thinking, what have I internalised growing up in this type of society over the years, and what is not appropriate. But I think that's kind of encouraged by the media, like whenever there's celebrities or important people saying things that is offensive, it's just banter, and that reinforces it. And if you don't have any people of colour in your life, you might think, well, that is acceptable because the media says it's acceptable to use that as banter. And you know, there's that disconnect in society for some people that don't have any diverse friends or families, maybe even colleagues, you know.
The media really should really help in trying to educate people. I don't think they're doing enough, to be honest. Schools are not doing enough, to be honest. These words, people need to understand that this is what these words mean. Like you said, the history behind them, what they are, you know, and that they're capable of hurting people.
I just want to add as well, I think it's like an individual thing as well, because like we said before, like if someone says, oh, my friend wasn't really bothered by this, X, Y, Z, I think everyone's on their own individual journey as well. And like I said before, like my self-awareness growing up has, you know, heightened. So back then, if someone said something to me which I now find inappropriate, I might give you a mixed message. I might be telling another person, oh, that's acceptable. I might be encouraging them unwillingly knowing. And so I think it is a difficult thing to sort of, it is a sensitive subject. So if one day you might say something that's indifferent to one person, it'll be a different experience with the next person. So it's not just, I'm just going to get it right and that's it for the rest of my life. It's one of those things that it could come back up constantly, and it's something that everyone's working on. It's not just the person who says something that might be inappropriate, it's also me kind of being brave enough to challenge this time, or me trying to conserve my energy not to say anything. So it's always ongoing.
Yeah, I had an experience on holiday recently, and the lady that owned the lodge came to visit us. It was a bit weird. My partner's white, and he was like doing the barbecue, went round and introduced himself, and then I came round. She went, oh, you're pretty, where are you from? And I was like, Yorkshire. And she was like, where's your family from? I'm like,
Right.
Yorkshire. Where are they all from though? And I just went everywhere, and I could see the look of disappointment on her face because she wanted me to say, and I just went just everywhere.
If someone just straight up said, what's your heritage though? I'd happily say my heritage. But I'm from Barnsley.
Exactly. My mum and dad are from Huddersfield. I'm from Huddersfield. Like, I could go back quite far.
I suppose it's like knowing how to ask that question, because the amount of times I'm sure you would have been asked where you're from.
Yeah.
And I had to go around that merry-go-round. But
Yeah.
if people just knew, say, what's your heritage?
Exactly.
And know that that's like
It's got to be
just
annoying.
like a normal way to say things. It is annoying. I get it less.
Get
It's
annoying. Yeah, no. Because white people don't get it. You know, I never get asked, oh, where are you from?
Look Irish.
You know what I mean? It must be so annoying.
Yeah. I've had people think I was white as well and gone, oh, where have you been on holiday? Your tan's gorgeous. And I was like, I just made stuff up. I'm like, Brazil. I've been there for 2 months. It's can't be bothered.
Oh dear.
Yeah, that time thing, funnily, when I took my son to school recently, we went past the tanning shop, and he said, what's that, Mum? What do they do in there? So I said, it's where people go in to change the colour of their skin. He said, people who changes the colour of his skin? I said, no, you know, like when you go into the sun, and when white people go into the sun and they get a bit brown. So I said, people pay. You mean, Mum, that people pay to get my skin colour? I said, yes. You've got a lovely skin. I even admire it. And sometimes I said to him, you know, everybody wants what they don't have.
Yeah, because there's whitening creams as well, isn't there?
Yeah. So it's like
Yeah.
when you've got the black skin, you want to put in some whitening cream, and when you've got the white skin, you want a tan.
Do you feel experiences of racism have affected your mental health? As statistically black people are less likely to access primary care and early intervention mental health services, why do we think that is?
I think for me, in terms of racism affecting mental health, it's even as an adult, even if people aren't having racist thoughts about me, I perceive it to happen, like I'm almost preempting it. And there's a way of like, it's quite stressful because it's how I always feel like I constantly have to smile, not dress a certain way, like be more like palatable to certain audiences, and that is, for me, that is quite stressful, and it's like I'm always perceiving that I'm going to be judged which has taken its toll.
I think for me, when I think about it, you know, quite detailed and reflect and going forward as well, I think less so now, but it definitely has for a long time induced anxieties because in particular, really a lot more so when I was young, is I would automatically, the minute that I went anywhere that was out of any area, I'd be looking for representation straight away. And even, like, I've had past partners who will say to me, why every time, everywhere we go someone and you see a black man, you let onto him or whatever else? Because I know that he knows that we're the only ones here who look like us. And just having that knowledge of even just a nod or just a, you know, acknowledges to him and to me that actually, you know, it's okay. And for me, for a long time, anywhere I went, especially in pubs, I'd get a real anxiety about going to pubs.
I get such anxiety with pubs, it's like working men's clubs and that kind of vibe.
Exactly. Not, as I say, it's a lot less now. It does come up again when I go out, say, into really rural areas and things like that, but for a long time, I think that was probably the main thing for me. If I can think of a topic that's quite broad for most people, I would have thought.
Walking into a white space and everyone's staring at you and it going quiet, or turning up for an appointment if you've made it on the phone and people not expecting you to have this skin tone because of your accent. And I guess, like you were saying, it's that accumulation, it builds up. It might be little subtle things, it might be overt things, but it builds up and it's still the same wound eventually.
They might not be thinking anything of the sort, but it's just like it's funny what you just said about pubs. I was literally in a pub the other day near mine, and my other half was like, oh, do you want to nip to the bar? I'm just going to nip to Lou. And I was like, I really don't want to nip to the bar. And for me, it felt really rational in the moment, and he understood because he knows how I feel. But I feel like I'm just going to be stared at and judged, and I don't. It's been like that since I was probably like first started going out, like 16. Just shouldn't have been going out, but
I think as well, like sometimes people focus on intention, or they didn't mean it, but really we shouldn't focus on the intention. We should focus on the outcome. You know, if the outcome is the same as someone saying something overt as it is somebody saying, you know, where are you really from? You know, we need to focus on how it impacts on a person. And for me, like, you know, you were saying, going into pubs and certain areas, you just feel like you're sticking out and someone's going to say something or do something, or, you know, whether it's cross the street to avoid you, or if you're on a bus and, you know, the bus is full and there's an empty seat next to you but they don't want to sit next to you. It's those things have a big impact, you know.
Yeah, but it does. I feel like growing up, you kind of... But for me, I was sort of labelled as quite like the naughty child. And growing up again, being more self-aware, I question a lot of it, and I think sometimes I wonder to myself, like, is it because I'm black? Is it because I'm mixed race? That's the way that I was treated? And I battle with myself about what those happened and think, you know, they didn't have those intentions. But then the fact of the matter is that I was treated differently, and I was behaving similar to someone like my whiter peers. So for me, it did feel like I was discriminated against.
It's hard to validate it. It's not validated.
Yeah. So you know what? There's a real, I mean, not to interrupt, but there's a real point there that you made, and it's something that I've been thinking throughout this. And like as a child, I always wanted to be a singer or a comedian, and a lot of I mean, probably the sort of stereotype is that a lot of black people go into sort of entertainment type fields, and I feel because of that maybe systemic push, if you like, into that field for a very long time, had an effect on me as well. And I was like yourself, right? And I was the class clown, sort of the performing monkey, if you like. You know, that's probably the elephant in the room, and that's what I felt like a lot as growing up, because that's what I always sort of...
People just assume you can sing.
Yeah, well...
I don't mind that so much, but they do just assume you can sing. But it's not come from nowhere, this like feeling of like being judged. I mean, have had really quite violent racial attacks like verbal attacks. Like I've had a grown man in the street when I was 12, like going, "I'm going to spit on your ancestors, you dirty N-word, get back home." There's so many periods of time I've been told that I need to go home. Do you speak the language? You know, it's not come from nowhere. I think the perception is that we're sensitive and we're just reading into things, and it's not come from nowhere. So
chip on the shoulder.
Chip on the shoulder is a big one. So I think sometimes people will say those things because they don't have the full picture.
Yeah, of all the thoughts and feelings that you carry on just by going into a room. And then there's other things that really bother me is like the labels of like aggression as well. Because I am mad, I am angry, I have to think about these extra things all the time.
But you have to be conscious of it.
Yeah, I have to manage
Toxic
it.
stress.
I have to,
I've got that with my son as well. He's just, it's like you're describing my son to me on the stories that you're saying, exactly splitting. That's exact. Constantly angry, and he's thinking, I've got a reason to be angry. I don't think it's, I'm being
allowed to be, I should be allowed to be.
and I should be allowed to be kind of thing. And I wonder if, the going into the bar thing and seeing somebody similar to you, why, I wonder if that is a big cue as to why we should have more representation in the mental health services. I mean, if you just walk into a place and there's no connection, you right from reception, from the people you're seeing, and you're thinking, no, there is that. Probably, I'm thinking, if we're all saying there's that, when you walk into a place you don't feel comfortable, if you don't find a representation,
it moves through different venues. And that's why I think a lot of black people are we don't access early intervention services straight away, and I think we're overrepresented in statistics of being sectioned because we let it fester. And I think not seeing people that you can relate to plays a massive part into that.
I think as well though, not only that, I have seen it and I've experienced it with clients as well in the past who I've worked with, and obviously I'm able to relate to them in that sense of that they've gone to access services, or they're trying to, or considered accessing services, and as they've attempted, the sort of, because of that anger and that sort of bravado, if you like, that, and it's a protective factor, it's a protective, mask that as people from BAME backgrounds have to have, I think, just due to what we've been through. Anyone from not from that sort of background, that's immediately taken back, and if I'm coming in and I'm being abrupt, or I'm putting on that bit of anger, it's like, oh, it's the angry black man. I don't think I can work with this person, or so then that prevents them, and they think, well, why should I go and access?
And culturally, there's not like another way of expressing yourself, because I think culturally it's like we don't cry, we don't access support, we don't talk about things. Definitely from like a Caribbean perspective, we don't talk about mental health. So if that's ingrained in you, then you build up the courage to access services. It might just be like a rude receptionist, or it might be that you're just like so anxious that you can't really think straight, that you're not communicating properly. You've reached that step, and then you don't get what you've come for as well, so then you're deterred in future.
And I think when you think about even the generational trauma that we've had to experience, and it really interests me, and I think that that's a big impact in the figures and the amount of people from those backgrounds that are still experiencing that. When you think of having to the Windrush generations coming over, being sent as a 15, 16-year-old young person, exactly, leaving the parents, leaving the families for years to go and earn money and try and bring them back, or vice versa, the parents leaving and leaving children with other family members or people that might not even been really fit to be taking care of children at that point. And that was going on for so long, and then to then be integrated into a society where people didn't accept you, and you was given the the lowest sort of the low poverty environment to try and grow and work through. There's no wonder that's still there.
And touching on that, statistically, the numbers are higher for mental health, within the black community. But if we look at the research and the evidence, that you know, trauma affects up to 17 generations. So where does that put many people who are black heritage? You know, my family's from the Caribbean. Those were enslaved people. You know, if you think about what's gone on there and how that's transmitted through the generations, and then we don't have. Do we have any trauma-based, race-based things to help people with that? It's just dismissed.
Yeah, I don't think even hearing that statistic, like, that's a fact. But I think a lot of people would hear that and just be like, no, you need to push through, you need to get on with it, you just need to forget about the past and focus on the future. And that kind of rhetoric is actually really damaging.
It really is,
And then it leads to that substance misuse, it leads to, you know, self-medicating, you know, and that's just continues from generation until that chain has been broken, and it's still
hard to break that chain.
It's still almost, you know, impossible with the way that, you know, society is to cut that cord.
But even when the black diaspora have tried to get their own identity in this country, especially, so Rastafarianism, they were vilified. There was a famous person, I think he was called Rastafari Everton or something. He was in the 80s. He was taken to court because he wasn't working and stuff like that. The media just absolutely hammered him because he was Rastafarian, and so this country's just got such a history of demonising certain cultures and peoples, because we've always got to have an enemy, haven't we? And just
divide and conquer.
So
I feel like there's like two layers there. So there's one that's like the experience of the discrimination and oppression, but then also that experience being invalidated and not listened to, and having to kind of like internalize all them feelings and just being like dismissed. So there's like two there. And I think in terms of like access to mental health, if we're talking about the majority of therapists and workers being white, having your therapist be the person who doesn't understand and completely misunderstanding that kind of layer, I think it completely makes sense why they wouldn't want to go to services.
And it is, and I think it's really important, and that's why, you know, even when I think about it now, and I'd love to think that by me, you know, because my other role is and profession is as a counsellor, so to think that, you know, young black males in particular, because I know the statistics for those are just so alarming, to have that representation, and for them to see, and me to be able to talk to them on their level and understand their language, that it encourages them and encourages us to change that. And for us
so hard to find a black male, like a black counsellor in general, but a black male counsellor.
Well, to be honest,
I've got two in the room.
I've worked here for like 6 months now. I've not actually had one like person of Caribbean background as a client in counselling, and to me it's really shocking, to be honest.
We have a big population.
Well, like I was saying, and I was alluding to before, and that anger and that sort of bravado, I did have a client, and a lot of it stemmed from that, and it was funny really, because I did see that a little bit as well, that sort of side of it, where, you know, people were a little bit feared and whatever else, but because, you know, I could see through that and I understood that, I felt that even they found it a lot easier to be able to open up and connect with me, and actually we did some really good work. So I mean, even if, you know, we only see one, person come through the door from,
it's worth doing.
Exactly.
Well, to be honest, in a previous job, it's different. I did actually speak to a client who came from a black background, and a lot in counselling is to do with like your counselling relationship. And I know sometimes when you connect, you can just feel it straight away. And with that client in particular, it was just amazing. I felt like it was amazing, and it was just progress. And I felt like, similar to you said, Denver, that it was just it was working, whatever was going on. I don't want to talk too much into depth about what the counselling was, but I'm just kind of agreeing with what you're saying, with how the difference is, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
perhaps a little smile.